My name's Daphne, and today we're going to be working on a journal. This is an example of what the journal could look like once you're finished. You can use anything, for the journal cover you can use anything you'd like. The best thing though is these nice cardboard pieces from cereal boxes, cookies, whatever. They have a nice thickness to them, and you don't have to buy the backboard. First thing first though is you're going to want to gesso your front and your back. The reason for gessoing is that the front has this waxy feel to it, and you want the paint to go on nice and smooth, and it won't with this plasticky coating. And then conversely, you want to coat the back piece of this because it's porous. Paper is porous, and if you don't use gesso, then the paint that you put on is going to be absorbed right to the paper, and it won't have that nice bright look that you want it to have. So first things first is apply gesso, and because that's what I have on hand. And the idea though, it's just to coat this on. Now you can see you don't have to be careful about this. It's just a matter of getting this coat on there. And it shouldn't take you any more than 5 minutes or less to get this on. So here we are, and I have my paints ready. I'm going to be using Quin Magenta, Ultramarine Blue, Green Gold, Hansa Yellow Medium, Titan Buff, and a Titanium White. So I'm going to grab some magenta. Take some ultramarine blue, and with enough mixing, blue and pink or red make purple, and cover the whole thing up. At this point, I'm not worried about anything. There's nothing to worry about. You're painting. It's not like you're solving the world's problems. Just going in there and making sure, or not making sure, whatever. This is not rocket scientist. And there's nothing to be afraid of. I know it's a scary thing, and I know that, and I don't mean to be funny about it, and I don't mean to make it any less important than what it is. But I understand it's scary, believe it or not, to do this, because you think, what if I mess it up? What if I don't like it? Well, the beauty is that if you don't like it, then you change it. I'm going to introduce some of this Hansa Yellow Medium, and I'm just going to go in here lightly. It's almost taken I don't know what it's almost taking. It's picking up some of that white. Because I did not allow the paint to dry underneath it, it's picking up and taking away some of the color from underneath. So again, you experiment. Do you like what it looks like? If you're doing this and you realize, I don't like it, well then you wait until it dries. I'm a very organic artist, and I suppose for me that just means that I don't like straight lines. It's never, to me, straight lines are not interesting. I want things to curve and be zigzag. That's not to say that I don't use straight lines. Obviously I do use them, but in later layers I do things to cover up the straight lines so that they're not so straight. Actually, I'm liking that. Now the problem is, I'll tell you what the problem is. If one waits too long, you get stuck. You see something, you like it, and you think, I don't want to change it because I like it. There's something there's a saying that goes, don't get married to any particular piece. And that just means that for as beautiful as it is right now, and for as much as you don't want to change it, to ruin it, do it. Because believe it or not, it's all these layers, all these additions that you make that make a difference in the final piece. I'm gonna take some green gold. There we go. I hate to waste, so what I'm gonna do is take off or use the paint from the top of this plastic that came from the paint and just use that. So even the slightest, the slightest dribbles of paint make a difference. So I'm going to take my white paint and I'm just going to go over it. Because my paintbrush is wet and because I'm using fluid acrylic, it's going to seep underneath these little holes. And because the rest of the paint wasn't dry, it's picking up that gray color. I don't like it too much, but again, I'm not worried about it because I know that this is only one layer of many layers. So I'll go back in here and I'll try it again, this time without diluting it. It's a little bit better. And I don't want to say ruin it, but I just undid what I did. But that's okay. One of the things you want to make sure is that what you do on one piece, you do on the other, because you want a cohesive look. So for example, I have my white here, I have my white here. If I don't put any white on this side, because it is a journal, it could work, because ultimately we are going to fold this over and then the two sides typically won't be seen at the same time. But if you're doing any abstract piece, a piece that is not going to be folded, a piece that you see in its entirety, then you do want to do that. You do want to be able to, what you do on one side, you do on the other side. You want continuity. That being said, fluctuate, and this is the beauty of fluctuating, is that you can decide you're going to do something and then later decide you're not going to do it. So I decided I was going to do it, but in a different color. That's pretty cool. I have the end of I don't even know what this was from, some kind of printer inner paper. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to mix some titanium white and some magenta and make a nice light color. I'm going to paint it onto this and then I'm going to stamp it. Again, don't think too much about it. The more you think, the harder, seriously, the more you think about it, the scarier it is. And there's nothing to be scared about. It's paper. Okay, so I've dried this with the blow dryer. It's nice and dry now. And so I can add more paint without worrying that it's going to disturb the underlayer and make mud. The beauty again with these journals is that you can add whatever you want. You can add paint, paper, stick glue, jewels on it, whatever you want. And so while I was drying it, I was going through a little bit of my stash and I came across these little tidbits of paper. And it's these little things that will end up ultimately making this yours. So I'm looking at these and I'm liking the look of these little snippets of paper, and I'm going to try them and see what they end up looking like, and if I don't like it, then I'll just cover it up. So to adhere your pieces of paper, I use a matte medium. And I'm just going to put some on my paper, and then on what's a substrate, and then go over it with a coating on top. And it almost, because what I use was tissue paper, it disappears nicely. This is a little piece of, obviously you can tell, music note paper. And I was looking at this and realizing, well, trying to figure out what I didn't like about it. And after looking at it for a little bit, what I realized I don't like is that straight edge. So I just took that and ripped it off. I'm going to add some more down here. Apply my paper, and then add some more matte medium on top of it. If you're using anything heavier than paper, there is matte gel or glossy gel, and that's just a heavier substance. And I have this other little piece of paper that maybe I'll put down, here. So I'm going to go back and add some more color on top of this. I think I'm going to bring in some oranges. So I've got my yellow and I've got my magenta, and I'm going to mix the two. Nice. I'm going to go in here and maybe let's try this. Now it's important to realize is that it's important to understand that the color that you decide on and the color that you apply to your piece may not look the same, and the difference in that is, and the reason why is because of the background. I have a whitish background on my palette, so it's giving me a truer color. On this piece, it's not white anymore. I've got a purplish, so it's going to look differently. The orange is going to look differently on this than it is on my palette because of what I have underneath it. And the only way to understand that is to play. And you'll see how that is, or why that is. Let's go there. I'm liking that. See, I feel myself struggling. I feel myself waiting too long for something to happen. I like that. So, an important piece that I didn't speak about yet, and that I should, is value. And so, what is value? Value is the contrast between. Value is the light and dark of any particular color, whether it's white or black or blue. So value is not white and black, or white or black. Value is the darkness and lightness of any particular color. So to make things stand out, to make things interesting, you want to add value to your pieces. And this is an area where you can see that there's value and why it stands out. If you take a look at this, you've got this white here. The white is darker than this brown here, and so it stands out. Same here. This white is a different value than the color behind it. It stands out. I have my purplish, my pinkish. These colors here, they're very similar in value, which means that they're very similar in how light or dark they are. So they don't stand out, they blend nicely. But to have interest, you want to be able to have a nice expanse of value, in your work. This green, I like the green, but if you were to squint or close and open your eyes, as I'm doing, this is what stands out, because you've got this blob of color, this blob of dark around this lighter color. And so that stands out. And I don't want it to stand out because it's not important to me. I want to use it as an accent piece, but it's not important enough to me for to leave it on its own. So I'm going to go in, and I just threw in a completely different color. Well, you can see me hesitating because it's not something I wanted to do, I suppose. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to wipe it off. Now, I do tend to use a lot of color, and that's great. One of my struggles, though, has always been using too much color. And the reason I say that is because if you use too much color everywhere, there's no place for your eye to relax. And so I'm liking this piece, but I'm seeing that it's just, there's a lot of everything in here. There's no place for the eye to relax. And I'm not helping the situation any by adding this. But again, I work in layers. So just because it looks like this now doesn't mean it's going to look like this later. So I've dried my front, and it's a love-hate relationship. I see it and I like it, and then I see it again, I stare at it some more, and I don't like it. But again, this is the beauty of doing what you're doing. You can change it however you want. So while I was drying, I was going through my stash of stuff, and I came up, I found this little piece, and I put it on there, and my first reaction was I like it. I like how it sets off this yellow, this in here. By taking it off, I don't know if you can see it. It's just it's too dark up here. You've got, it's dark, light, dark again, and it just, it feels like this piece is just, it's a spotlight. That's all you see. So I was looking at this and I like the idea of it, and I'm thinking I like it. I don't know. I liked it as soon as I put it on, but then I thought, well, maybe I don't like it. So what I'm going to do is, you know what? This is the, this hurts for me to do because, well, it's a nice piece of paper and I don't want to ruin it. But this will help me decide. I mean, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm liking that. I think I am. I'm gonna get rid of this because I don't like flat edges, or straight edges, I should say. Or maybe I should do it here. So this is a thicker piece of paper. So using the matte medium will be a little bit more difficult because it's so thick, and this is more of a fluid. So I have the, what's called the golden soft gel, and this is thicker. I'll show you. This is a thicker consistency, and so it will allow, this holds peaks, and this will allow whatever piece of paper you put on to stick better. The other one's just too fluid. So I'll go in here, I'll put that on. Now, I had used, yeah, that's sticking nicely. I had used the matte medium earlier, and now I'm using the gel, gloss gel medium. And it's okay, you can interchange both of these. Again, the difference is that once I use gel medium, the gloss, once it dries, there's going to be a sheen on it. And when you hold it up to the light, you can see it. Oh, see, it's picking up some color from somewhere. You can hold it up to the light and you can see it. So if you try to add anything on top of the gloss gel, something pencil or pastel, it's just not going to stick. So what you could do is, if all you have on hand is a gloss gel, you use that as the glue. And when it's dry, go over it with that matte medium. And so whatever medium you use as your last medium is what's going to affect everything thereafter. So it takes me usually about a good half hour or so to warm up and get my groove, and to finally feel comfortable with what I'm doing. And once that happens, you know, the ideas flow. So up until that point, for me, can be a struggle, but I know that already, and so I try to remember that and keep that in consideration so that I don't stress out too much. I'm thinking I need something really bright in here, so maybe, let's see. Excuse me. Again, this is all play, so it could work. Maybe it doesn't work, but your brushes also play into your stroke line, and what it will ultimately look like. If you have a soft brush that doesn't leave the strokes of the paint, then you don't have that. But if you use a stiffer brush and you use that as a paintbrush, or the paintbrush that it is, it will show some of these lines. Again, see this in here? I didn't let it dry completely, so what's happened is it's mixing everything together. And I don't know that I wanted that, but it's a done deal, so I'll just go with it. So one of the things I talk about, actually one of the things I should talk about is making your piece cohesive. What does that mean, cohesive? That means that there's something in your piece that brings it all together, whether it's one color that solidifies everything, or a pattern that brings everything together. What you don't want to see is things floating off into space. And one of the things I use to combat that are stamps, to bring things in together, to tie things, to make them cohesive. So I've got a stamp there, and I just did it upside down, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm going to take another stamp from the same family, and I'm going to bring it up here. So one way of making things cohesive is to add something that unifies it. And in this, you can use stamps, you can use color. Another thing that you want to do in terms of making it pleasing is not to have floaties, and it's not what you're thinking. Floaties, in the way I'm using it, is you don't want a stamp here, a stamp here, a stamp here. They feel like they're lost. They feel like they're floating in space. So one of the things that you do want to do is to have them connect somehow. So I stamped my first one here. I stamped my second one on top of it. I've got a lone guy over here. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to come in with another stamp, and I'm going to overlap that. I'm liking it. So what's starting to happen here is I'm starting now, it's this black everywhere that's bringing this piece together. Stamp. I love it because it obviously covers a lot in one go. So I'm going to take my ink pad. I'm going to stamp it. I'm going to go in and stamp this right here. Up here. And do the same thing on this side. Go down bottom here. I like that better. I like where it's going. That black ink has unified this piece. I don't like this too much. What I can do, I've got a lot of purple in here. So what I can do is bring that back over into this area here. So I'm going to take some of my ultramarine blue, some of my Quin magenta, I'm going to go in here. I'm almost going to envelop this circle. So because it's not too thick, you can see that underneath it, you can see the orange that was there. And actually, I think I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to go in here and take some of this off. Let's see. I'm liking this. Now again, this would have never happened if I hadn't done the previous work. So I can feel it's funny, I can feel the looseness settling in now. I just think it's not ironic, but I always tend to go back to these same colors, the green, the oranges and the pinks. And it's taking on a different feel to it, and I'm liking this. It was too dark for me before. I didn't like how it looked. I mean, I'm definitely getting closer to being finished. It needs a pop of something. It needs something. I'm not sure what that something is yet, though. So I may go back in here and retry this one. I'm getting rid of my straight lines there. No, not quite. Okay. I'll leave this for now because something else will happen. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is work on the back. And again, you can do what we just did previously with the paint. You start by adding color. You can add 2 or 3 colors. You can add 1 color. Or what I'd like to do is use paper. I'm going to take this, clean up my mess here because it tends to get very messy. So what I'm going to do here is I have a couple of options. I can just glue this on and then cut off the edges and then have this, or I can rip it up and glue them on separately. People do have the tendency of, because there's a fold in the book, right? Because there's a fold, people have a tendency to do this half and this half. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. What happens though is sometimes it just, there's a definite division between the 2 sides. So sometimes it is easier and more appealing to use 1 sheet of paper to go across. But I am going to rip this again because I don't like straight edges. Although what I could have done is just glued it on and then, maybe I won't do that. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I will. Paper even feels old. It is a photocopy of something. It just looks like it's old. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take my matte medium and I'm going to, let's see. So I was waiting for, well, yeah, as I was waiting for my paint to dry, I was looking at this front cover, and I realized what I didn't like about it. And it was something that I had mentioned before, was that this circle right here was floating. You had some pieces up here, you had the circle here, and you had nothing else tying it all together. So what I ended up doing is I stamped up here. I took a different stamp and I stamped it overlapping the circle as well as overlapping down here at the bottom. So now there's a flow. It does this, it does this. I do need a little bit more up here because I want your eye to follow this black ink and to go up here. But I see that I'm liking it. I like it much better now, and it's getting there. I'm also realizing, maybe I'm going to go in here a little bit darker because, as I said earlier, I want some value in this piece, and it's very limited in my values. I've got some bright in here. That being said, I don't want the value to be too drastic because then whatever I put on there, if I put a white or a pink, that's going to pop out, and then I'm going to be back to square one and trying to balance things out. I like this much better where it's going. I like the idea of incorporating some of the oranges in here. There's very little in here, but again, this book is going to be closed. So here it is. I like it. I like how it came out. It took me a couple of hours to come back to it and realize that it is what I want it to be. So what I did add, I ended up adding a little bit of dark, some of that magenta, pure magenta with my finger on the edges, and it just helped close it in almost. It felt a little bit too, it wasn't dark enough for me. But it's all very subjective. You could realize that you like it that way, and if you like it the way you had it, then you leave it. Or if you realize that it needed a little bit more color, a little bit more this and that, you do that. So the beauty with art is that it's very subjective. So next thing is adding the inserts, the paper. So I took regular 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper and I cut them down to size. Easy way, you open up your book, and because this is a homemade book, the beauty is, again, that you can make it whatever size you want. And conversely, then you need to make the papers, you can make the papers any size you want. So one thing you do want to be sure, though, is that when you cut your papers, that the width of them is shorter than the actual page. There's more papers. It's a thicker piece, so the paper hangs. So there's a couple of ways you can fix this. What some people do is just take scissors and cut. Another thing you can do is take your X-Acto knife, cut down some of this excess. Or another solution is you take your sheets here and then cut them down just a little bit smaller. If I have my tools readily available, obviously it makes it easier, but if I don't, then I improvise. I don't have the time to go looking for them. And it gives me that great edge that I like. So here's one. See, now you see when I close it, that piece of paper is no longer sticking out. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one right here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to go in a little bit. And I'm going to rip it. I'm going to put that back in. There. So I got my cover. Put my stacked pieces of paper that I cut to fit inside. And it looks good. You take a look and you turn it over and you see still there's some excess here. It all really depends on how finicky you are. I'm not very finicky. I like the idea of it sticking out. In some cases, I might even go in and purposely add some some pieces that stick out, but I'm okay with this. This is just a fun little journal for me. My signature, this is one signature. I'm going to attach my signature to the book cover. So now that we have everything all set, we finished our cover, front, back, inside. We got our papers all set and cut. We now have to put everything together. And like I said earlier, there's a few ways, 3 ways. You can sew it, run it through your sewing machine. You can staple it if you have a stapler long enough to fit, to reach the middle, or you can do a stitch. A very simple stitch is can be done. So it's a 3-hole stitch. So what you want to do is put this aside. You need one of these things. A hole punch, I think. No, not a hole punch. An awl. I eyeball these. Some people like to be exact, and it's not that important to me. So I'm going to take it right in the middle. I'm going to run it through. Now I want to make sure to catch, you see this paper right here? I want to make sure to catch this paper also, because if I go to the edges, then this paper will only be secured by one hole, and it's okay, but sometimes it moves. I just like to catch all of it. And this, trial and error. You'll do this, and then you'll be ready to bind it, and then you'll realize, shoot, I did not go through all the holes or through all the papers. And so you live and learn. It's an experiment. And believe me, you do it enough times, you realize to do it right the first time. I'm going to make these holes bigger. There. So I'm going to take this now, and I'm going to take my cover, make sure I have right side up. Actually, it doesn't matter. What does matter though is when you do your holes, if your holes aren't exactly so many inches apart, and you make your holes and then you go and actually bind your papers, if your holes aren't exactly so many inches apart and you put this the wrong way, you're going to find that the holes may or may not line up. So I just like to be sure that I'm careful and I remember which side is the top and which side is the bottom. So that I've got enough space. I want to make sure I have space, space, space. This one, that works. So I'm going to go, actually I'm going to move this up just a little bit. There. I'm going to go through that same hole, but this time I'm going to come out through the back of, or through the middle spine of the cover. Okay. So I've got my cover all set. This one didn't go right through the middle, as you can see here. I can go back and redo the hole. Let me see. I'm going to go, actually, I am going to go right through it. The problem though that I just did by going over the hole a second time is the second hole was so close to the first hole that it's gonna rip. But again, these things, if I'm not worried about it, actually there is a way to correct that. So I went in here, you can't see it, but I did my first hole, which was to the right of the spine. It was too far over, I need to correct it, so I made another hole closer to the edge, to the spine, except what happened is it's so close together, and this is paper, if I pull too hard it's going to rip. So there's a couple of ways around this. You can take another piece of paper and use this as a a band. That could work too, right? And this is what I love, these work as you go. Oh, because you get ideas that you wouldn't normally. If you don't screw up, then the ideas don't come. I don't know if I like that specifically. I'm going to grab. I don't like that because it's too stark. I talked about value before. If you take a look at these bands next to the background of the cover, there's too much of a value difference, and it just screams out, look at me, and that's not the direction I want to go in. So I'm going to go grab some washi tape, and I'm going to put that on. Okay, I found some washi tape. Washi tape is decorative tape. It doesn't have a lot of value or strength in its sticking power. Do I like that? Actually, I like that. So I will have to go in and add some of the matte medium. Actually, I should do that now, but I can do it after. Probably easier if I do it now. And then 3. So this is where the hole is, right there. So I'm going to go and cover that. And because I want it to be a little bit uniform, I'm going to do the same thing. And my hole is right there. So you just heard that pop you heard was the tape coming off on one side. I didn't give it enough, oh, it was too tight. Okay. So actually what I should do, I'll do this again. Here are my sheets with the 3 holes in them. So instead of using such a thick pile, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do it again, and this time make sure that I come out on the spine. There, that's better. That's better, and my last one is right here. There. Okay. So now I've got this. So this is how it's going to be. I like the look of that. So to string it, you can use floss. You can use this macrame thread. There is also the sticky, what's it called? A wax thread, and that works really nice too. I just can't find mine, but I do have some of this. And typically, I'm gonna do. Is it twice? No. I'll go with 2.5. This is the part right now. I'm going to go from the middle through to the back, making sure I don't pull that thread all the way through. I'm going to open up my pages. First, I'm going to make sure that they are all lined up. Okay. Now I know they're lined up. I'm going to take this needle. I'm going to run it through the middle of my stacks of paper. And that's why I said earlier, make sure that that hole is big enough that you can stick your needle through. Otherwise, if you have a small hole, thin needle, it gets very frustrating. Okay, I got that. Now I'm going to run it through this bottom hole, all the way through both the papers and the cover. I'm going to pull that tight, making sure I'm pulling this. I'm also making sure that I'm not going to pull out this string that's hanging. So again, it's not, I just punched a hole. I'm going to pull that all the way through, and now I'm going to go through my middle hole, back through the center hole to the back. There. I should have used a different color thread, but I will explain. I have my string running down the middle, and I also have each one of these threads, once coming out on the left side of my middle band here, once coming out to the right of this middle band. You want to make sure that these are taut, and they are. I'm just going to pull this a little bit, pull that down, pull this up, and pull this up. Nice and tight. I'm going to make a nice knot, a double knot there and there. Because of this is macrame, it tends to, I think, come off, unravel a little bit. So I will at the very end put a little bit of glue on there. Cut that and cut that. So I'm just going to take some of my soft gel, stick my finger in it, and then dab it on. I'm going to make a nice knot, a double knot there and there. Because of this is macrame, it tends to, I think, come off, unravel a little bit. So I will at the very end put a little bit of glue on there. Cut that and cut that. So I'm just going to take some of my soft gel, stick my finger in it, and then dab it onto my knot, and for sure that won't come off now. You're going to let that dry. And voila. So we're looking at this, and you can see that it's because it's so thick, and because I did not crease the pages with a bone folder. I didn't crease the pages with a bone folder. It doesn't have a nice crisp, it doesn't have a nice crisp fold to it. So there's a couple of things you can do, and this is the beauty of playing with and figuring things out. You can either leave it as is, stick a big book under it, actually on top of it, stick a big book on top of it, something heavy that will force these pages down. Or what we can do is make some kind of tab that it will fold over and keep this closed. But for now, I think this is a good first project. This is a learning project, and you'll realize that once you make your first one, there's some things that you would have liked to have done differently, and you will. So thank you, and I'll see you all later.